Throughout history, mankind has been working to make life easier. Many inventions have been made, but few continue to make large strides in improvement every year. To me, one invention stands above the rest based on continuous improvement, and that's the automobile. According to Michael Gross, a science writer at Oxford, there will be 2 billion cars on the road by 2030. With this many cars in existence, I think it's important to know where cars started and the innovations that have been made, so that's what I'll be talking about today. I will go over some of the first cars, the Model T and the effect that it's had on the industry, and how import cars have entered the American market. I have loved cars my whole life, and I plan to go into the automotive industry in the future, so I've done countless hours of research over the years. And despite what you might think, cars actually got their start in Europe. French engineer Nicolas Cugnot built the very first automobile, according to Christian Petrie. However, many people contributed to the design. No one knows exactly who thought of the original concept, but the first recorded design, according to Orville and George Cromer, was in the Homer's The Iliad, where he talks about self-moved tricycles. The first cars were pretty much just steam-powered carriages, until 1885, when Carl Benz created a gasoline-powered, horseless carriage. It was called the Benz Patent Motor Wagon, and it was powered by a single-cylinder, two-cycle engine in 1893. Benz updated the design, and the world saw its first ever four-wheeled car. Other European manufacturers took interest in building cars, and small improvements were made. For many years, Europeans dominated the automotive industry, and America brought very little to the table to compete. That is, until Henry Ford began designing automobiles. By 1906, the price of cars was beginning to come down, and Americans started to realize how useful they were. On September 27, 1908, Henry Ford put the Model T into production, according to Lindsay Brooke, a writer for the New York Times. In just 19 short years, 15 million Model Ts were produced. The success of the Model T can partially be contributed to the innovations and accessories available for the car. Soon after production began on the Ford, there were magazines and advertisements full of attachments for the Model T. In her article, Mr. Ford's T, Lindsay Brooke claimed you could easily convert the Model T into a farm tractor, a mobile sawmill, a snowmobile, a race car, and even a semi-truck. This is a picture of one of the snowmobile Model Ts. With this amount of customizability and practicality, it made more and more sense to buy a Model T. Henry Ford created a legend, and that was so successful that within 10 years, the Model T accounted for half of all automobiles on the road, according to John Duncan in his book, Any Color So As Long As It's Black. Some of the options that Henry Ford included in the Model T are still used today, like the automatic transmission, electronic ignition, and the alternator. Duncan also stated that 15 million Model Ts were made by the end of production in 1927. Not only was Henry Ford responsible for many innovations in the automotive industry, but he was also responsible for innovations in manufacturing, most notably the moving assembly line. This improved the automotive industry and manufacturing everywhere. However, it wasn't long before other countries began to make a name for themselves in the automotive industry. Before the 1980s, the Big Three, Chrysler, Ford, and Chevrolet, all had the American automobile market to themselves. As time went on, the American people proved that they wanted bigger, smoother, gas-guzzling cars. American manufacturers catered to the wants of the people, and cars were large, heavy, and had big engines with terrible fuel economy. All was well until 1973, when the members of the Organization of the Arab petroleum exporting countries proclaimed an oil embargo. Gas prices in the United States skyrocketed, and Americans could no longer afford to drive big heavy cars. Luckily, Japan had been perfecting the fuel economy division in their vehicles. They were smaller, lighter, and considerably more fuel efficient than American vehicles. Japanese cars flooded the American market and completely changed the direction that cars were headed. According to Elisabetta Bini, the author of Oil Shock, the 1973 oil crisis saved the planet. This is largely due to the drastic shift in the automotive industry. Even today, manufacturers focus heavily on maintaining good fuel economy. In conclusion, the automotive industry has had a relatively short but exciting history. It all started in Europe with Carl Benz and his Benz patent motor wagon. Improvements were made to the original design, and soon after, the automobile was introduced to America. The automotive industry really gained footing in 1908 with Henry Ford's Model T. Many innovations were made in American auto industry until the oil crisis of 1973, when import cars took the market by storm. It's amazing to see the automobile made changes throughout the years to fit the needs of the consumers. Just think about how far cars have come in the past few years. I can't wait to see what the future holds for the automotive industry. If innovations continue to be made at this rate, it's hard to imagine the amazing things we could see in the future.